with all these things happening, again, really from back half of this year onward, I think we're finally all well positioned for the skies to clear and us to have this, I think, exciting, rewarding business again on many levels that's just been more of a muddy track than it needed to be over the last 3, 4, 5 years.
This is the Box Office Podcast. I'm Daniel Loria, the editorial director of Box Office Pro, the pulse of theatrical exhibition. Here this week with my colleague and co-host Rebecca Pahle. And in this week's episode, Rebecca will be interviewing John Partilla, the CEO of Screenvision Media, one of the leading cinema advertising networks in the United States. That is coming to you in the second half of the episode. But before then, we've got some schedule updates here on the horizon as more titles are coming into that 2025 release schedule. 2025 looking better by the day. And then our forecasting segment as I look over the weekend forecast here on a Memorial holiday weekend that has two major wide releases. But let's get right into it, Rebecca. We have to chat about the movies we've seen recently because newsflash, I went to the movies finally. Finally escaped. The Fall Guy. And I know you also went to go see The Fall Guy.
Yep,
I'm using my AMC A-list subscription now that it's the summer season. You too, what AMC did you visit?
Just the one in Times Square. It's the easiest for me and Eric to get to.
I saw that at the AMC in Lincoln Square. And I cashed in my concessions vouchers to get the new AMC donut holes. This is how pathetic my life has become. As I'm going over the quarterly earnings calls of all our friends in exhibition, I'm just writing down concessions I should try. And in the AMC, the AMC earnings call, between thrilling updates on EBITDA, we had concessions update basically saying that these donut holes with icing are the ones to get. Just go with a partner so you don't eat all of them by yourself. I can't imagine that was healthy
I'm
at
getting
all.
all of them. I'm eating all of them.
It's good. It's good. You can, if you're dedicated, a 2-hour running time, I think it's doable alone. Is it advisable? Not so sure. But I
am
a great afternoon
dedicated to
at the
junk
movies.
food, as you well know. And I definitely, I don't know what I'm going to eat for Furiosa. Is that a donut hole movie? I don't know.
No, if I was at the Alamo, that's a solid 4-beer movie. What's that? 2 hours plus 4 beers. Solid. That's what I did for John Wick. You need the watery beers that just connect you back to
keep you hydrated.
College football Saturday. Exactly. Like a Bud Light, Coors Light, 11 a.m. tailgate sort of situation. And with the IPA on a high in the third act. That's what I'm thinking. But no, I'm going to see this at also an AMC. I've got my Dolby Cinema tickets ready for Thursday. I'm going to the first commercial screening of this. When are you watching this?
Yeah. Eric and I, we dropped the ball a little bit. So we're not seeing it until Monday, but that's because we want to see it in IMAX at the Lincoln Center. So we're seeing it big. I have been over this weekend in the process of making myself a themed hoodie. So I'm dressing up.
Oh, nice.
It's gonna be a whole thing. I got a piece of art on a beach towel that I got from my brother for Christmas. That is the Euphoria from the first film, the guy with the guitar, except it's Kenny G.
I'm excited to see what other surprises are in store for us this weekend, but we'll be going over that in the forecasting segment brought to you by Screenvision Media this week. Before we go there, Rebecca, we should talk about the schedule updates because we got plenty of them.
Quite a few of them, yeah. Let's break this down studio by studio, starting with Sony. Any fans of 90s horror should be pleased because we have a reboot, reimagining. We don't quite know what the situation is specifically, but it's an updated version of I Know What You Did Last Summer, dated for July 18th of next year. And 28 years later, the sequel to 28 Weeks Later, which itself is a sequel to 28, it's the Danny Boyle zombie.
It's a Danny Boyle zombie, but here's something I didn't really understand from what we got from Sony. In the Sony email, it said it's the sequel to 28 days later. They didn't mention the weeks part. So I don't know if there's
Weeks is a whole different set of people. Like Robert Carlyle was in that one. It was really good, but there are no
Right.
characters in common.
There's no
So
continuity there. So this is going to be
there's
direct
continuity.
continuity with days.
There's
rather
continuity.
than
It's
weeks.
just, it looks like Weeks is going to be the one in the middle. That's just like, it's off talking about this other corner of the country and what
It's
these
the
other people are
Halloween
doing.
3 of the saga. It's the season of
Yeah.
the witch and its own doing its own
It's doing
thing.
its own thing and it's doing it well. Also, we have an untitled movie from Sony and Blumhouse that will be coming out on August 29th of next year. That is a movie in the Insidious verse. We don't know anything beyond that, obviously. And that's a franchise that has a ton of spin-offs. And I don't actually recall if I mentioned it. 28 Years Later is coming out June 20th, 2025. So,
Oh,
yeah.
nice summer release date for that.
Good summer for horror next year. Moving forward to Universal, several Blumhouse pictures done in collaboration with Universal. There's a film called The Woman in the Yard, which has been set for March 28th, 2025. Something called Drop on April 11th, 2025. The Black Phone 2, going back 4 months from June 27th, 2025 to October 17th, 2025, a really nice corridor in that run up to Halloween. Similarly, a sequel to Megan, a surprise hit when it came out in February, I believe, last year, has been moved back a month from May 16th to June 27th. So right there in the heart of the summer. And finally, from Blumhouse and Universal, there will be a sequel to Five Nights at Freddy's 2, going for December 5th, 2025. They're really
Christmas horror.
That's an ambitious release date, and
I like it.
yeah.
I like it. When the email came through, it just reminded me so much of when the Scream movies had those December release corridors back in the 90s.
They really
I just
succeeded
associate
with
going
those.
to sneaking into horror movies. In December of my teenage years.
Yeah, and then also from Universal Pictures, we have a movie called Him from Monkey Paw Productions, which is Jordan Peele's production shingle, and that is coming out September 19th. We don't really know a ton else about that, but
it's like a veteran quarterback mentoring a younger quarterback. We'll see how that plays out. Yeah, why not?
Speaking of sports and tournaments and worldwide competitions and things of that nature, shifting over to Warner Brothers, there will be a sequel to Mortal Kombat 2, coming out October 24th of next year. I honestly forgot that their first Mortal Kombat reboot came out, and I interviewed one of the actors for our publication.
I'll never forget that Mortal Kombat. I'll tell you exactly why. That was the first movie I saw after the pandemic reopening in New York City at the Union Square Regal 4DX. We talked about like a 4-beer movie. I was like 4 beers deep. I went to pregame
4DX,
with a
that's
friend.
literally a movie just full of people punching each other and fighting each other.
Oh my God, it was a horrible idea.
bruised.
I mean, listen, I love immersive seating. Don't go immersive seating after you drink 4 beers watching English Premier League soccer in the morning with your friends, because you'll go into the screening and your bladder is going to get persuaded to be a little bit more active with the bumping and thumping of the motion seating. You mentioned some interesting release dates for the horror there. So we've got 28 Years Later on June 20th of next year. And then a week after that, we've got Megan 2.0 on June 27th.
Yep.
Competing studios. I mean, you have to think one of those is going to move. I would be very surprised if there's enough market for 2 event horror movies, one after another, that summer.
We're going to be seeing some chicken going on at the box office. Warner Brothers also had some additional announcements, release date changes, nothing competing with that horror summer 2025 corridor there, but a movie called Companion coming out January 10th of next year. Weapons coming out January 16th of 2026. The animated film Margie Claus, which seems family oriented, that's way ahead to November of 2027. The other big headline was Supergirl Woman of Tomorrow, coming out June 26th, 2026. It's Craig Gillespie directing it. I believe Craig Gillespie did I, Tonya, so that's an interesting,
Yeah. Interesting choice.
Just an interesting choice of title. I am curious to see. I mean, there was no mention with that Five Nights at Freddy's release from Universal, no mention of day and date, either positive or negative. They just said it's going in theaters wide, which of course the first one did too. It just went to,
Yeah. It was available simultaneously on Peacock, and that didn't affect opening weekend at all. But as we heard
I
in a
gotta, I
prior
gotta
episode of the
assume.
podcast that he recorded with Alex Delvecchio from the Rutgers
Yeah.
Cinema, great insights from him on how that just great opening weekend business.
And then it just tanked. The chase weeks there were
Just
very
terrible.
awful.
And
Fell off a
everybody's
cliff.
watching it at home. It was, hopefully they correct those mistakes in the next outing. And we'll need all the help we can get in 2025 as exhibition looks for another rebound year after losing a lot of momentum at the beginning of this year because of those actors and writers strikes, that hangover really depressing the market in the first half of 2024. But we are turning a corner. We've got Memorial Day weekend. It's a big holiday weekend, and we will come back after this short sponsor message with the Box Office Pro weekend forecast.
This episode of the Box Office Podcast is brought to you by Screenvision Media. Screenvision Media is a national leader in cinema advertising, boasting the most post-published showtime inventory and capturing nearly half of all cinema tickets sold nationwide. Their expansive network covers 94% of DMAs with almost 2,300 theaters and 14,000 screens. Screenvision Media reaches a young, diverse, and highly engaged audience with innovative ad solutions while guaranteeing incrementality and measurable business outcomes for advertisers. Choose Screenvision Media to leverage innovative ad solutions and guaranteed results in your cinema advertising campaigns.
And a big thank you to our partners at Screenvision Media for sponsoring this week's episode of the Box Office Podcast. You can hear more about Screenvision from their CEO, John Partilla. He is interviewed by Rebecca Pahle in the second half of this episode. But before we get there, we got to talk box office. It's in our masthead. That's what we do here.
And we have two wide releases coming out this weekend. Two. Imagine it.
Both are competing for that number one spot, but we do expect Furiosa to come up on top over the Garfield movie. The Warner Brothers prequel to Mad Max Fury Road is currently tracking to a $40 to $50 million 3-day opening weekend. Now, if we expand that to a 4-day weekend frame, we are expecting anywhere between 45 and 60 million, taking into account that Memorial Day overperformance. At the end of the day, Rebecca, this is going to be a PLF play. And I say that after we look at the great overperformance of Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes a couple of weeks ago, where you had a pre-pandemic title from the 20-teens perform decently well with War of the Planet of the Apes. And then the post-pandemic sequel used the strength of premium large format screenings to exceed the opening weekend of its predecessor. So that is the model of what we have here in front of us with Furiosa. If you remember, Fury Road opening to 45 million back in 2015. Not a huge opening weekend that ended up in second place in the market behind Pitch Perfect 2 in that frame, never ever taking the number one spot in the domestic box office.
That's a good box office trivia question.
Right?
That's what beat Citizen Kane for the Best Picture Oscar question.
Well, we are expecting Furiosa to win out this weekend over Garfield. I've heard a lot of reactions to this film. I think everyone agrees it's not the exhilarating, breathless, 2-hour chase sequence that Fury Road was. This is a more ambitious film. We saw that at CinemaCon, where George Miller was there in person, presenting the film with Liam Hemsworth and Anya Taylor-Joy, and they both kind of confirmed there are multiple acts in this film. It takes over a number of years. It's a very ambitious world-building film. That's not exactly the type of movie I like to see, but I have eternal gratitude to George Miller and the Mad Max saga after what I saw in Fury Road. So I'll be going. I'm just not sure if it's going to get more than the core audience for this.
I don't know. I think word of mouth has been good. I think the PLF play is, as you said, is going to be great. I don't know. I just don't want to people to go in with sky high expectations, given how beloved the first movie is. We'll see. But I definitely have my IMAX tickets for as soon as I can see them. For the other film on the Garfield front, we actually have some data on the international side.
And domestically, we have a $35 to $45 million 3-day opening weekend range for the Garfield movie in North America.
It's been rolling out in international territories since early May. So far, it's made the most of its so far $49 million global gross in Mexico, where it's coming in at 8.2 million. Other high performing markets so far are Spain, Germany, Peru, and Central America, all within the 1 to 1.5 million range so far. Sony and their communications on this title has just really emphasized the fact that they plan on this film to have a strong long run throughout the summer. Obviously, release dates kind of situated to against when schools in various countries and in various markets get out.
And especially over holiday weekends. That's why we have, let's say, a 3-day and 4-day opening weekend forecast higher than we normally would have on something like Garfield. Another factor that we have to bring in, looking at the performance of If from last weekend, and we'll go into this in a little bit, but If last weekend opened to $35 million.
Iffy.
By Saturday morning, we were thinking it was going to do in the low 30s. And that is something consistent to the pre-release forecasting that we were doing here at Box Office Pro through our box office panel, which is a number of industry veterans and industry leaders that come up with these numbers that we share with you each week. Through our polling, we found out that If was performing extraordinarily well in the mountain states, in Texas, in family regions, but was struggling in big major urban markets. That ended up affecting, I think, the first half of that weekend. But then we saw word of mouth and that walk-up business lift what was looking like a $30 million or $31 million opening weekend for If up to a $35 million weekend for that title. We expect that dynamic to be in play once again for Garfield, with the added benefit that there's a real IP to this movie. If the biggest strike it had against it is the same strike that The Fall Guy had against it. They're unproven IPs. They're new IPs. And I know we said this all last year. Audiences want something new. They want to engage with new movies. But that hasn't really translated into this summer so far, with The Fall Guy underperforming and If having a lot of question marks around it. Ultimately, I think If was able to benefit from a strong word of mouth and walk up a business. And we believe that will influence Garfield to potentially hit $40 million plus over this opening weekend here in North America.
It's interesting. I'd definitely be curious to see as we look forward what the holdover is going to be for If, because I mean, as you see, the walk up, I mean, that ties right into the issue of movies having strongholds. Not saying that If will, but certainly it falls under the same sort of category when we talk about the way that moviegoer patterns of behavior have maybe shifted since 2020.
Yeah, it's a really interesting to look at just how much forecasting has evolved in this period, which is exactly why we decided to prioritize a change to professional, not amateurs, but people actually working in this industry, doing this for a living. And our panel, I think, has done a fantastic job in bringing these insights into what the forecasting scenario is in 2024 for these titles. And that leads us to what we predict is going to be the number 3 finisher here this weekend. In its first holdover frame, If from Paramount, we're expecting a range between $16 and $20 million on a 3-day opening weekend, and between $20 and $25 million on a 4-day Memorial Day weekend holiday frame. Now, there is going to be a drop-off here, primarily because it's going to lose its PLF screens to Furiosa, and we have to remember If made 22% of its opening weekend box office from PLF. That's gone. It's going to be competing on showtimes with 2 other major wide releases from studios. And on top of it, that family audience is going to overlap with a better known IP in Garfield. So the word of mouth, the very positive word of mouth that If scored in its opening weekend with an A cinema score is going to be crucial for this movie to perform well in its first holdover frame. Now, we spoke a little bit about where it performed better, where it struggled a little bit more. We had Canada coming in with a very strong 8.7% of that opening weekend market share. They also had a holiday weekend last weekend with that Victoria holiday in the country. I'm very curious to see how Canada holds in week 2. And I am very curious to see how it sustains its performance where it over-indexed. Markets like Salt Lake City, markets like Baltimore, where that family audience really turned up. How much of that is going to be cannibalized by Garfield? And now you have other markets where it's probably not going to play a factor at all because it under-indexed in major DMAs like Chicago, San Francisco, and Toronto. So that's going to be an important element here in just how much If can distinguish itself from Garfield in its week 2. Overseas, the movie is off, I think, to an okay start so far. A number 1 opening weekend finish in the United Kingdom with 3.2 million last weekend. In Mexico, it lost the battle to Garfield, a number 2 finish with $2.8 million in that market. Garfield doing a lot better than If over there. In Australia, we did have a number 1 opening with $2 million for If. So we are expecting good business here for If, but we do have some doubts just because of how competitive this frame is.
Which is it's not a bad problem to have, I think, after we have had a definite paucity of family movies over the past half year. It's something that it's nice to have. It's nice to have more than one at the market at any one time. I just see this as the parents are going to be the one that see Garfield as having any recognizability. So maybe they buy the tickets for Garfield, and when we'll be seeing if kids hear about this If thing and request to be taken to that instead.
We did see, I think, a surprising performance from the 18 to 24 young adult demo for If's opening weekend, which tells you that it's playing a little bit older than you'd guess. And I'm guessing that Garfield is going to bring in
factor.
It's the Ryan Reynolds factor. I think that brings in a bigger audience share for If, that Garfield will probably just live and die off of that family audience, right? So there's a little bit of distinction there. We just don't know how much. We are expecting a number 3 finish in the marketplace for If this holiday weekend. All in all, we're expecting the 3-day top 10 movies range to fall in between 125 to 150 million. That's our forecast for the top 10 films in the marketplace. And for a 4-day weekend, we are expecting it to fall into between 150 and 180 million. That is adding up our forecasting for the top 10 movies in the marketplace here in North America.
As we're recording this, the pre-sale tickets for Deadpool and Wolverine just went on sale, and those IMAX screenings are already selling out minutes after they were available. Yeah, that was Deadpool versus Wolverine being one of the upcoming titles showcased by Screenvision at their annual Upfront, which is an opportunity for them to invite potential advertisers or advertisers who they do work with and really show off the power of the theatrical slate for the rest of the year, saying, hey guys, here's what we have coming to theaters. Here's how important the in-person cinema experience still is to your customers. As you'll hear in my conversation with JP, we went over just the general state of in-theater advertising and Screenvision, particularly going into some announcements they made, particularly that they're partnering with Disney for some content for a pre-show.
Yeah, I'm excited to hear that interview, and you'll be able to tune into it right after this break.
John, as always, it's so great to speak with you 2 days as we're recording this after the Screenvision Upfront, seeing all those reels of the upcoming films and everyone getting excited. It's an event where I always leave very refreshed.
Thank you, Rebecca. We do our best. We try, and very glad to be here today with you.
hmm I mean, I think we asked this question of you last year, but it's something that I think is an ongoing conversation in the industry. Companies like Screenvision, or for that matter, any in theater advertising company that relies on advertising to keep going. That's
Sure.
Box Office Pro as well. We depend on the success of different industries and different companies in order for us to be successful. Obviously, how have things progressed in the last year for Screenvision in terms of your advertising
Yeah,
partners?
and there's a lot of industries that are like that, right? Where you're a derivative of a larger industry, whether it's tires for the automobile industry, right, or so on.
hmm hmm
Working the restaurant industry and all the things that circle around that. But you're right, right? As a business that focuses on, on the advertising network business around movie going, there has been a bit more out of our control these past few years than
hmm
normal, right? Things are always a bit out of your control. But as we all know, right, that what we've had to
hmm
endure since the spring of 20 with the global pandemic, followed by, I would say the ill-timed, but, necessary strikes to
hmm hmm
support talent in the ecosystem. It was a difficult sort of double blow for
hmm
all of us, just as we were getting sort of getting our footing back at the very end of 2023. Having said that, I'd like to think that the skies are clearing now, and we're really seeing the worst of those quote externalities moving behind us as we approach the back half of 2024.
I mean, you said things that you can't control. I almost feel like that applies to the positive end too. I don't think anyone expected Barbie and Barbenheimer to do as well as it did. That was kind of out of control in the best possible way. I mean, that's got to help you guys express to people the continuing importance and power of the cinema industry.
Yeah, it really was a cultural zeitgeist moment. And it really, not only were the films obviously very, very entertaining and very, very different, I think it drove home the point in a way that many films do not, which is the love people have to share things in these congregant, culturally shared zeitgeist moments, as I said. And that really was driven home I remember sitting on the outside on the Upper West Side, watching people that weekend walking around in pink outfits and fedoras, and I kept thinking, oh my gosh, like this thing is really, really taking off. And we'd had a bit of an early sort of showing of it. And we entertained some advertising clients earlier in the week, and we knew they were loving it. So
hmm
we had a
hmm
small taste then. But what started happening that Thursday and Friday was just beyond.
I feel like, as we all know in this industry, movie going begets movie going. I would see people dressed up to go see Dune, and I always like seeing the montage you guys put together of the year's upcoming films because it's a reminder that, gosh, Deadpool and Wolverine, things like Inside Out. I mean, we're looking forward to a really good next couple of months, I think.
Yeah, we're human beings, right? And we love storytelling, as a world, and we love to connect and share experiences and talk about those experiences. And movie going is, to me, one of the greatest anchors that does that, best of any other entertainment
Mhm.
industry, including sports, in my opinion.
Yeah. I'm not a sports person. I'm a movie
Yeah,
person. So
there you
I would agree with you there.
go.
I want to go back a little bit to last year's Upfront. One of the big points of your presentation there was really doubling down on original content, working with partners. I know Kevin Hart's company was one of those who you're still working with now.
Yes.
What's the feedback been like on that, both from customers from movie theater, guests at the cinema, and from your partner clients?
Well, thank you for asking about that. It's something we have a lot of care and dedication toward, which is we have a multifaceted role in this, privilege we have to leverage the pre-show inventory with our movie theater partners. And obviously, one of the predominant goals of that is, are the economics, right? It's an important revenue capture opportunity for our theater owner partners that helps many of them defray the costs of the movie ticket themselves for
And
consumers
stay open. I
and,
mean,
and stay open. And I think we play a meaningful part in that.
mhm,
And I don't want to overstate our value, but I really think we play a small part in that as well. So the economics obviously matter greatly. Having said that, it can't be just about the economics because you've got to be very sensitive, as all movie
mhm,
owners are and all studios are, to the ultimate boss of us all, which is the consumer, right?
mhm.
And making sure that you try to make that experience as enjoyable and entertaining and perhaps informative with, behind the scenes content, et cetera, as you possibly can. And so to do that, right, refresh and pivot, our watchwords for us in our pre-show, which is let's not let things get too stale. Let's
Mhm.
constantly seek out content partnership. You mentioned Heartbeat, right? And Kevin Hart's, studios in that regard. And we have a wonderful partnership with that group. We have a wonderful partnership with the movie folks that have supplied us a good deal of content. I don't know if you know Eric Tabak and Cleveland.
Oh,
They're wonderful folks, and
mhm,
they give us a good amount of behind the scenes footage. And
mhm,
we have a nice arrangement and partnership, and many other partners that I won't list name by name by name. TikTok being one of the larger ones
mhm, mhm,
as well. But again, the watchwords are fresh, innovate, pivot, so that when people are going to the movies, they consistently feel like they're getting something entertaining and fresh
mhm,
that rewards them for their time, while we're also doing our part to provide, I think, good economic opportunities for
mhm,
our
mhm.
partners.
It's an evolution that really has to happen, I think, especially you look at younger generations. I mean, Gen Z, Gen Alpha, these are people who grew up, they're used to being able to skip past ads or block ads. I mean, they really don't like advertising that looks like advertising. So, creating something that is just original and fun and entertaining on its own merits, I mean, it's not an optional thing at this point.
No, agreed wholeheartedly. Right. You're right. I think that the bar gets higher every year, particularly for the younger generations that are a little more exacting, right, in terms of what they require.
Mhm. Speaking of raising the bar in terms of content partners, obviously no one partner is better than any other partner. But if you're looking just at name recognizability, the Disney partnership that you announced at the Upfront,
Yes.
that's a pretty big deal. Could you talk a little bit
Yeah,
about what that is and when
yeah,
it's
we
rolling
worked with
out?
David Seiden and his team over at Disney. And, without, getting to all the granular detail, right? Of course, we love all the studios, and we love the partnerships and the
Mhm,
content they provide to all our theatrical movie going partners. There's just very something special about the way that the world sort of watches what Disney does, right? As a
mhm,
studio and as a company. And, part of it is their size. Part of it is they have had this reputation for a long, long time of Imagineering and
mhm,
creativity and Marvel, and they're a bellwether for so many of us. And so the opportunity to partner exclusively with Disney, at least for the next year, we hope longer, around what we'll call sort of unique footage opportunities, right? That we'll share with our movie going audiences, with our cinema network partners, and interviews and perhaps special access to celebrity talent. I don't
mhm,
want to give too much away, but I think what we'll have is something that feels special, exclusive, fresh. And by partnering with Disney, I think it's a huge vote of confidence that we feel very privileged by Disney towards Screenvision
mhm.
to have that kind of partnership, and we feel very, very appreciative and grateful to Disney that they are working exclusively with us. So, and the ultimate winner here, again, besides just our movie theater partners in the Screenvision Media Network, of course, are the consumers, as we try to keep the pre-show more, as fresh and entertaining as ever through Disney.
I
So,
always like the pre-show you do at the Upfront. You do your own little
yeah,
pre-show there with the trivia. That's always fun.
we do, and we bring in. I know you've noticed this now over the last several years. We bring in some of our own, company employees and sellers, and
Mhm,
sales reps. And I think we often like to say that as much as we want to make sure that the pre-show feels, again, as we've talked about, innovative and fresh and
mhm,
interesting, engaging, and informative, we also want the advertisers to feel like their brands are center stage. They are front and
mhm,
center. They are the heroes of that pre-show. So we don't want to take too much of a focus away from the brands themselves. And then
mhm,
as we do the pre-show for the upfront, we take a page out of that playbook
mhm,
in terms of highlighting our own employees who are there connecting to the Madison
mhm,
Avenue audiences and sellers and
mhm.
buyers that they connect to on a day-to-day basis. So we highlight, just like we highlight brands, we highlight our employee base a bit in
Mhm.
that show as well.
Yeah, and it really helps the content. I mean, it doesn't feel cookie cutter at all. It feels like a lot of time and attention and care has been put into creating something that works for everybody, whether they're the clients or the movie theaters or just people watching at the
Yes,
movies.
and Rebecca, you made just such a good point there too a moment ago, which is while we're also that night, the focus is predominantly on really highlighting the slate, right? The upcoming slate from Q4 of 2024 or that
Mhm,
year to 2025. We talk about the dynamics of the business and what we can uniquely offer, but core to that, of course, is our network, right? The impressions that we offer. And so you
mhm,
heard me talk about with our recent wins that we reach approximately 45% of the U.S.
mhm,
movie going audience with our impressions.
mhm.
You
And
heard
like 7 out of 10, 4 out of
Yes,
the top.
that's right. Three
Yep.
out of the top five, seven out of the top 10 exhibitors. And then I really genuinely, from my heart, every year I thank our exhibitor partners because they really are extended family.
Mhm,
And we hosted dinner the evening before the upfront with just our exhibitor partners.
mhm,
I don't know if you knew that. And we have a lovely long evening of conversation, and we talk about the business. We have some tears lately over the dynamics and challenges of the business, but we have a way more laughs together.
Mm-hmm.
And what you really feel is this community of people in it together. And so the whole Upfront, what we strive for, in addition to, hawking our wares, so to speak, to Madison Avenue, we try to come through with what feels very genuine to our culture, which is an appreciation for our advertising partners, but very much also our exhibitor partners.
Because it's that sort of spirit that you get at CinemaCon and at the regional shows as well, kind of feeling energized about the upcoming slate, about all the possibilities that exist in our industry. And I think you guys do a good job of communicating that narrative to all sorts of other companies from all sorts of other different industries. I mean, how has that process evolved for you? I mean, Barbie must have made it a lot easier to.
Well, yes, because I think, again, always central to the conversation is the product, right? And that's when we say we're a derivative in a very humble way. You can operate your business as effectively and efficiently as you possibly can, whether you're a theater owner or a cinema advertising network like ourselves. But if you don't have the product, right, there's only so much you can do. It's like, again, if you have a restaurant, but you're not getting, your vegetables and food and so on being delivered, there's only so much you can do. And so once that product, as you said, moviegoing begetting moviegoing, once that product, comes in and continues to fill our pipeline from the back half of this year onward in a more regular cadence with all this brilliant films, and I'm so glad everyone's, back to work and shooting and so on, it should feel really special out there and exciting. And alternative content will be a part of that, by the way, we haven't yet mentioned the Taylor Swift. I think big news of last October.
And this time last year, that wasn't even on the schedule.
We had no idea, right? And that came in as this really sort of gift from the camp of Taylor and what she did herself. And I thought just the way she democratized that experience and opportunity for maybe a lot of folks that maybe didn't have several $100s for a concert ticket was very special for her as well.
Yeah, it was so fun seeing photos from exhibitors of the fun events that they put together, and like Taylor Swift impersonators and little stations to make friendship bracelets. It's
and kids dancing in the back of the aisles, the way they sort of let people, sort of break out of the confines, right, of a typical movie-going experience and dance and move around. It was exciting. And so I just feel, to bring it back, that as long as we keep having a steady pipeline of terrific content, and that's what Hollywood does best of all. It's one of the great exports, global exports that this country does, and that comes out of Hollywood. That's fabulous. And then the fact that it opened up all our minds to think more expansively and differently about alternative content. And then finally, streamers, not that we've talked about the that are not the enemy, right? I think they're a frenemy. We all have to work together and understand the challenges, but also the opportunities. Streamers are increasingly becoming a pipeline content source into our movie theater partners. And so with all these things happening, again, really from back half of this year onward, I think we're finally all well positioned for the skies to clear and us to have this, I think, exciting, rewarding business again on many levels. That's just been more of a muddy track than it needed to be over the last 3, 4, 5 years.
It feels like something's clicked.
Yeah, I agree.
It feels good. I mean, I know it's tough. Like we were saying this time last year, we didn't even know Taylor Swift was going to be on the calendar. So there's no telling what surprises are going to be in store for us the back half of this year. But of what we know, what are you looking forward to most?
Well, I have to say I'm very interested in Beetlejuice 2 coming, just as a movie. If that's what we're talking, the new Gladiator, right, with Ridley Scott, right? I think that's kind of a guy movie maybe, but I'm excited to see it. Obviously, Deadpool in July, like everybody else. And then my children aren't so young anymore, but between Inside Out 2 and Garfield and a couple of other good family titles that are coming, I think there's something I might be able to get my 16-year-old to go to with me and just enjoy some of those too. So we've been missing a little bit of family. We've been a little lighter on the family content. Yeah. And I'm excited to see a real pipeline of that also in the back half of this year. So that feels pretty invigorating.
Yeah. I mean, it's interesting to think of, Inside Out. I compare it kind of in my head. They couldn't be more different, but Five Nights at Freddy's being this kind of nostalgia property that if you're, a 16-year-old kid has fond memories of the first Inside Out when they were, it feels like Inside Out. The first one came out 4 or 5 years ago. I know that's not the case, but.
Right. And by the way, I also think that, Wicked is going to be just huge in November, December. And it's, when I think back to how Wonka really surprised to the upside, that had real legs.
Mm-hmm,
Um,
mm-hmm.
and the other thing we haven't touched on today is that rom-com, Anyone But You, which I did wind up seeing as well. I saw a ton of movies over the holiday period, like
Mm-hmm.
many of us. I think that also said to folks, like, don't think that the rom-coms are dead.
Mm-hmm.
They're right here as well. So I just think it's all, you just said it well. I feel like something is unlocking
Mm-hmm.
and all the pieces are starting to come back together. And we just have to navigate through these last few months of turbulence and then come through it.
Yeah, like you look at Bob Marley One Love, films like that and Anyone But You that really held on so well. You can't go into this industry kind of thinking for sure what's going to happen. And I feel like with Screenvision, that's something that you guys are always good at, is responding to the situation as it happens and not getting locked in.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for saying that. We do our best. And I think we have found a path, continue to find a path ahead, and to stay pragmatic and stay practical, of course, but to stay positive.
And stay fun.
And stay fun
Mm-hmm.
and stay on brand, and really, for our own sake, try to make this a company that's a great place to work and a great business.
Mm-hmm.
And to, our job is to provide the right path, through to the other side as the business recovers.
Yeah, well, I've definitely seen some good headlines from you guys in the past year about working and renewing partnerships with your exhibitor partners. I think, it's always great seeing the Screenvision team at all the shows, because the power of communal gatherings. I think it's not just important at the movies; it's important for this industry as well.
Yeah, we all have to watch out for each other, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I feel that that's one of the more rewarding parts of this theatrical exhibition community, and we're proud to be a part of that, for
Mm-hmm.
sure.
Well, John, it's always so great to speak with you. I can't wait till next year's Upfront, but I guess
We can't wait to have you there, and we'll see who the talent is next year. We won't even know a few weeks prior. We're very fortunate to get Alec Baldwin, as we were mentioning earlier. He's just an icon in the industry. I thought he was so humble
Mm-hmm.
and so thoughtful and intelligent and so interesting. And
Mm-hmm.
he's a Baldwin, so very good looking, as always.
And you got to play that clip from Glengarry Glen Ross to a
Right,
room
did
full
you
of
watch-
advertising people.
Right. So instead of, like, for your listeners, those that weren't there, so instead of saying ABC, always be closing,
Mhm.
we were able to adapt that scene slightly with Alec and have him say, always buy cinema, preferably Screenvision in parentheses. But
Yeah, well,
fantastic.
neither one, you shouldn't count either one of them out. Keep bouncing back.
Well, thank you. Thanks for having me. We just love you guys so much, and have a wonderful weekend.
And that was John Partilla, the CEO of Screenvision Media, speaking with my colleague Rebecca Pahle here on the Box Office Podcast. Thank you again for listening. We'll be back next week for a new episode. The Box Office Podcast comes out every Thursday, so don't forget to subscribe. This show is produced by Report Edit Podcast in collaboration with the Box Office Company and Box Office Pro. Thanks for listening. We'll chat again with you next week.